Patrice Émery Lumumba was a leader who inspired millions, a symbol of African independence and pan-Africanism, but whose life was tragically cut short. This is the story of his rise, struggles, and legacy. Born on July 2nd, 1925, in the small village of Onalua in Kasai Province, Belgian Congo, Lumumba was the son of a poor farmer. From humble beginnings, he would go on to become one of Africa's most prominent leaders. After attending a Protestant mission school, Lumumba found work in Kindu Port-en-Pain, where he became involved with the Evalue's Western Educated Africans Club. He began writing essays and poems for various Congolese journals and successfully applied for full Belgian citizenship. Lumumba then relocated to Leopoldville, now Kinshasa, to work as a postal clerk, eventually advancing to the position of accountant at the post office in Stanleyville, now Kisangani, where he continued to contribute to the Congolese press. In the 1950s, as Congo began to demand independence from Belgian colonial rule, Lumumba emerged as a charismatic leader. In 1955, Lumumba became the regional president of a purely Congolese trade union for government employees, which was independent from the two Belgian trade union federations, Socialist and Roman Catholic, that other unions were aligned with. He also became involved with the Belgian Liberal Party in the Congo. Although the party held conservative views, it was not connected to the trade union federations which opposed it. In 1956, Lumumba was invited, along with others, to participate in a study tour of Belgium organized by the Minister of Colonies. Upon his return, he was arrested for allegedly embezzling funds from the post office. After various reductions in his sentence, he was convicted and sentenced to 12 months in prison and a fine a year later. Once released from prison, Lumumba became increasingly active in politics. In October 1958, he and other Congolese leaders founded the Congolese National Movement, Mouvement National Congolais, MNC, which was the first nationwide political party in Congo. In December, he participated in the first All-African People's Conference in Accra, Ghana, where he met nationalists from different parts of Africa and became a member of the conference's permanent organization. His perspective and language, now influenced by Pan-African ambitions, took on a more militant nationalist tone. 1955, Lumumba joins the nationalist movement. As nationalist sentiments grew stronger, the Belgian government announced a program aimed at leading the Congo toward independence, starting with local elections in December 1959. The nationalists viewed this initiative as a tactic to install puppet leaders before independence and declared a boycott of the elections. In response, the Belgian authorities resorted to repression. A clash in Stanleyville on October 30th resulted in 30 deaths, and Lumumba was arrested for inciting a riot. The MNC decided to change its approach, participated in the elections, and achieved a remarkable victory in Stanleyville, securing 90% of the votes. In January 1960, the Belgian government called a roundtable conference in Brussels with representatives from all Congolese parties to discuss political changes, but the MNC refused to join without Lumumba. Consequently, Lumumba was released from prison and flown to Brussels. The conference established June 30th as the date for independence, with national elections scheduled for May. Despite the presence of multiple parties, the MNC emerged as the clear leader in the elections, and Lumumba became the foremost nationalist politician in the Congo. Attempts to block his rise to power failed, and he was invited to form the first government, which he did on June 24th, 1960.
Men and women of the Congo, victorious independence fighters, I salute you in the name of the Congolese government. I ask all of you, my friends, who tirelessly fought in our ranks, to mark this June 30th, 1960, as an illustrious date that will be ever engraved in your hearts. A date whose meaning you will proudly explain to your children, so that they in turn might relate to their grandchildren and great-grandchildren the glorious history of our struggle for freedom. Although this independence of the Congo is being proclaimed today by agreement with Belgium, an amicable country, with which we are on equal terms. No Congolese will ever forget that independence was won in struggle. A persevering and inspired struggle carried on from day to day. A struggle in which we were undaunted by privation or suffering and stinted neither strength nor blood. It was filled with tears, fire, and blood. We are deeply proud of our struggle because it was just and noble and indispensable in putting an end to the humiliating bondage forced upon us. That was our lot for the 80 years of colonial rule, and our wounds are too fresh and much too painful to be forgotten. We have experienced forced labor in exchange for pay that did not allow us to satisfy our hunger, to clothe ourselves, to have decent lodgings, or to bring up our children as dearly loved ones. Morning, noon, and night, we were subjected to jeers, insults, and blows because we were Negroes. Who will ever forget that the black was addressed as tu, not because he was a friend, but because the polite vous was reserved for the white man? We have seen our lands seized in the name of ostensibly just laws, which gave recognition only to the right of might. We have not forgotten that the law was never the same for the white and the black, that it was lenient to the ones and cruel and inhuman to the others. We have experienced the atrocious sufferings, being persecuted for political convictions and religious beliefs, and exiled from our native land. Our lot was worse than death itself. We have not forgotten that in the cities the mansions were for the whites and the tumble-down huts for the blacks, that a black was not admitted to the cinemas, restaurants, and shops set aside for Europeans, that a black traveled in the holds under the feet of the whites in their luxury cabins. Who will ever forget the shootings which killed so many of our brothers, or the cells into which were mercilessly thrown those who no longer wished to submit to the regime of injustice, oppression, and exploitation used by the colonialists as a tool of their domination? All that, my brothers, brought us untold suffering. But we, who were elected by the votes of your representatives of the people, to guide our native land, we, who have suffered in body and soul from the colonial oppression, we tell you that henceforth all that is finished with. The Republic of the Congo has been proclaimed, and our beloved country's future is now in the hands of its own people. Brothers, let us commence together a new struggle, a sublime struggle that will lead our country to peace, prosperity, and greatness. Together we shall establish social justice and ensure for every man a fair remuneration for his labor. We shall show the world what the black man can do when working in liberty, and we shall make the Congo the pride of Africa. We shall see to it that the lands of our native country truly benefit its children. We shall revise all the old laws and make them into new ones that will be just and noble. We shall stop the persecution of free thought. We shall see to it that all citizens enjoy to the fullest extent the basic freedoms provided for by the Declaration of Human Rights. We shall eradicate all discrimination, whatever its origin, and we shall ensure for everyone a station in life befitting his human dignity and worthy of his labor and his loyalty to the country. We shall institute in the country a peace resting not on guns and bayonets but on concord and goodwill. And in all this, my dear compatriots, we can rely not only on our own enormous forces and immense wealth, but also on the assistance of the numerous foreign states, whose cooperation we shall accept when it is not aimed at imposing upon us an alien policy, but is given in a spirit of friendship. Even Belgium, which has finally learned the lesson of history and need no longer try to oppose our independence, is prepared to give us its aid and friendship. For that end, an agreement has just been signed between our two equal and independent countries. I am sure that this cooperation will benefit both countries. For our part, we shall, while remaining vigilant, try to observe the engagements we have freely made. Thus, both in the internal and the external spheres, the new Congo being created by my government will be rich, free, and prosperous. But to attain our goal without delay, I ask all of you, legislators and citizens of the Congo, to give us all the help you can. I ask you all to sink your tribal quarrels. They weaken us and may cause us to be despised abroad. I ask you all not to shrink from any sacrifice for the sake of ensuring the success of our grand undertaking. Finally, I ask you unconditionally to respect the life and property of fellow citizens and foreigners who have settled in our country. If the conduct of these foreigners leaves much to be desired, our justice will promptly expel them from the territory of the Republic. If, on the contrary, their conduct is good, they must be left in peace, for they too are working for our country's prosperity. The Congo's independence is a decisive step towards the liberation of the whole African continent. Our government, a government of national and popular unity, will serve its country. I call on all Congolese citizens, men, women, and children, to set themselves resolutely to the task of creating a national economy and ensuring our economic independence. Eternal glory to the fighters for national liberation. Long live independence and African unity. Long live the independent and sovereign Congo.
Shortly after the independence date of June 30th, certain military units revolted primarily due to concerns regarding their Belgian commander. Moïse Tshombe exploited the resulting chaos to announce that the mineral-rich province of Katanga was seceding from the Congo. In response, Belgium deployed troops, claiming it was to protect Belgian nationals amidst the turmoil, but these forces primarily landed in Katanga, where they supported Tshombe's breakaway regime. The Congo sought assistance from the United Nations to remove the Belgians and restore internal order. As Prime Minister, Lumumba did what he could to mitigate the crisis. However, his army was an unreliable source of power, his civilian administration inexperienced, and the UN forces whose presence he had requested were patronizing and assertive. The political alliances sustaining his government were also fragile. The Belgian troops remained, and the Katanga secession persisted. As the UN forces declined to help quell the Katangese uprising, Lumumba turned to the Soviet Union for aircraft to aid in transporting his troops to Katanga. He also called for independent African nations to convene in Leopoldville in August to rally support for his cause. These actions raised concerns among many, especially Western powers and supporters of President Kasavubu, who advocated for a moderate approach within the coalition government and favored some degree of local autonomy for the provinces. On September 5th, President Kasavubu dismissed Lumumba, but Lumumba immediately challenged the legality of this decision. Consequently, two factions emerged, both claiming to be the legitimate central government. On September 14th, power was taken by Colonel Joseph Mobutu, the leader of the Congolese army, who would later become president of Zaire, as Mobutu Sese Seko, who subsequently formed a cooperative agreement with Kasavubu. In November, the United Nations General Assembly recognized the credentials of Kasavubu's government, leading to a significant rift among independent African nations over the matter. Meanwhile, in October, Lumumba had been placed under house arrest in Leopoldville, guarded not only by Mobutu's forces, but by those of the UN as well. After the General Assembly decided to recognize Kasavubu's government, Lumumba escaped from home confinement and sought to travel to Stanleyville, where his supporters had control. However, he was caught by Mobutu's forces and arrested on December 2nd. Lumumba was initially held at a military camp in Thaisville, now Mbanza Ngungu, but concerns that the soldiers there were sympathetic to him led Belgian, Congolese, and Katangan authorities to arrange for his transfer to a different location that they deemed to be more secure and one that would almost certainly guarantee his death. On January 17th, 1961, Lumumba and two associates, Joseph Okido and Maurice Impolo, were flown to Elizabethville, now Lubumbashi, where they were delivered to the secessionist regime in Katanga and its Belgian advisors. On the flight there, they had been beaten by the soldiers escorting them, and once they landed in Katanga, they were beaten again. Later that day, Lumumba, Okito, and Mopolo were executed by a firing squad under Belgian command. Although their bodies were initially thrown into shallow graves, they were later dug up under the direction of Belgian officers, hacked into pieces, and dissolved in acid. The Katangan government withheld official announcement of his death until February 13th. and then claimed that Lumumba had escaped from their custody and had been discovered by villagers who killed him. Rumors of Lumumba's death had circulated soon after it occurred, however. The government's explanation of his death was quickly disputed, although it would take decades for the full circumstances surrounding his death to be made public. His death caused a scandal throughout Africa and beyond. Belgian soldiers who oversaw or were party to the dissolution of the African leader's body collected Lumumba's gold tooth as a trophy. The macabre artifact was finally returned to his family after 61 years, not with a formal apology, but only with an acknowledgement that a great harm had been done. Lumumba's assassination was a turning point, a tragic chapter in the post-colonial history of Africa, marking the extent of Western involvement in African affairs. Despite his death, Lumumba's legacy continues to inspire political leaders, activists, and people across the world who seek freedom and justice.